Nathan Simpson's going to come up next. Nathan's the CEO for Binjambar Farms, which covers nearly 3,900 hectares just out the road at Gollan. His position sees him manage all aspects of cropping and pasture, as well as the human resources, the budgeting and the technology adoption. Nathan did a Bachelor of Farm Management at CSU in 2009, and he's been back in the family business since then. In that time, Binjambar's made a lot of changes to their business, and Nathan's going to talk about some of those changes that they've made in technology adoption and those sorts of things. He's married with 4 young kids, and they love doing all sorts of things outdoors. So just as you come up, Nathan, maybe just before you start, what's been the main driver for these changes that you've made? And then we'd love to hear about some of them in your presentation. Thanks.
Thanks, Roger. Certainly the main driver to look at technological adoption and change in our business from probably 2016 in particular onward has been efficiency. So looking to maximise productivity off our given asset or land base, basically. That's been the main driver for us to look at technological adoptions, I guess, to answer that question. So at the start there, I did actually have a 3-minute clip, but I think that might put us over time, so I'll skip past that. But it's just a 3-minute video clip. It's on YouTube if you did want to have a look later or whatever. It just explains a bit about who we are, what we do, and why we do it, basically. It's something we put together back in 2017 to showcase to sort of clients and customers as well, about the business and about who we actually are, sort of thing. So as Roger said, family owned and operated company, business, at 50 kilometres east of you. So if you're heading to Mudgee from Dubbo, you'll drive past us on that Gollan Road. The family's been on Binjambar since 1868. So here 3 years ago, it'll be 4 years ago almost now, we celebrated 150 years of the family being at Binjambar itself, so the sort of main part of the property. Which is something we're pretty excited about and something that, I want to keep going. My brother and I got to work in a close relationship with our parents and our families. So we want to continue that legacy and hope there's Simpsons on Binjambar for another 150 years. Recently we acquired another property, in 2020 it was, which got us up to 3,850 hectares that we own and manage there at Gollan. We produce lamb, wheat, barley, canola and safflower and hay and silage on farm. So hay and silage has been a relatively recent addition to our sort of enterprise mix. Initially brought in for herbicide resistance management in our pasture phases and hay cropping as well to get on top of annual ryegrass problems. But then it sort of dovetailed into our lamb feedlot operation that we've developed to obviously provide fodder for that enterprise as well. So it's worked quite well. We had a focus on finishing lambs from, I'd say, my old man started trading lambs when I was in high school, so sort of went away from a breeding flock then, so we're talking early 2000s, and started trading lambs then. Since 2016 though, we sort of developed a feedlot and went full EID. So on the lambs induction, they all get an EID tag, and we use the data there to manage our better performing lambs and that sort of thing. Not dissimilar to the breeding ewe scenario that Lisa was just talking about. Technology, how has it changed our business? There's very little gut feel stuff anymore. Like we're making decisions on and management decisions on data inputs that we have from the different sensors and that sort of stuff that are out there, and the different methods of collecting that data. So obviously, livestock enterprise, there's obviously the EID tags that underpin that. So every time they're weighed, it's collecting that data on so we're recording where they've been in terms of which paddocks they've been into or pens in the feedlot situation, what they've been consuming in the way of a pasture composition or the ration in the feedlot. Obviously treatments, withholding periods and ESIs, that type of thing. Days on farm, like average daily growths, gains. So, weigh at set A, day A, and then day B, C, whatever, what their growth rates are. We're recording how many kilos in the feedlot. We're recording how many kilos they've been consuming on average. So say there's 400 lambs in a pen. We're recording that pen was fed 2 tonne or whatever it might be. So we average that out to get our feed conversion ratios on a daily basis, obviously in conjunction with the ADGs. And that all of that is underpinned by EID tags. We would not be able to do it without that implementation of EID tags, obviously, yeah. The big benefits, like straight away, the big major take-home after we started implementing EID tags was identifying those poor performers, and probably conversely the good ones too, the really good performers. So not too dissimilar with putting twins, scanned with twins on the best pasture to basically at the end of the day you want to maximise productivity. We're doing the same with our lamb trading enterprise. So those lambs that are capable of doing your sort of 400 to 500s and better in some cases grams a day, we're pushing them onto the best feed. And those ones that are not doing so well, you can either make the decision on whether how bad they actually are and you get rid of them, you just cull them straight away, or look for an alternative finishing solution. Like, so obviously your poor performers who are going to be doing 200 grams or less a day, you don't want them in a feedlot where it's a higher finishing cost solution. So you put them into pasture or whatever it might be to just basically more efficiently get those lambs to weight. Or like I said, you pull the pin and cull them out of the flock straight away. Identifying. So there is some correlations because of the wide genetic spread of like studs and producers, vendors. Like there's such a massive difference regardless of where the lambs come from and how they perform. Like the bell curve type scenario. It doesn't matter how tight guys have got their genetics. There's still a massive dispersion in performance at the end of the day. So at the bottom end, you've got a hell of a lot of lambs not doing real well, and at the top end, you've got some lambs doing really, really well, and there's that average. The average does shift, obviously, depending on how much genetic work the guys have done, I guess. So that's something we're trying to stockpile a data sheet onto is which vendors are supplying really good lambs that perform really well, and then trying to replicate that as much as possible, I guess, yeah. In 2017, Kieran, my brother, and I went on a trip to Japan and China. ANZ sponsored us over there. It was a ag tech themed tour that went through some different businesses in Tokyo in Japan and then in Chengdu in China, which was all about looking at ag tech and the adoption, what's being made out there now and in other industries, all in agriculture, but in like horticulture and dairy and the rest of it, what do you call it, the vegetable game where it's hydroponics, like the hydroponic type stuff. There was a hell of a lot of really neat stuff they're doing in those industries. So we went through there and with the idea of what could we take from these different industries to potentially utilise in our own business. And our big take home from there actually was that there's a hell of a lot of people out there who are after Australian red meat in particular, but they want to know like where it's from, guarantee that it is actually where it's from, where you said it's from, and provide that information on safety, that it's outside of ESIs and withholding periods. It's been treated ethically, humanely, and all of that sort of stuff. All of the stuff, I guess, we take for granted here in Australia, but it's something that's in high demand in those marketplaces that we found. So as a result of that, we came back home and met with Hitachi, who were obviously one of the companies that we met with in Tokyo, and with the help of the MLA PIFT program, so Producer Innovation Fast Track program, we developed a software package with those guys to basically manage all our EID data. So at that period in time, we were finishing between 40 and 50,000 lambs a year. So we had reams and reams and reams of data on Excel spreadsheets, so I had no bloody idea what to do with it, basically. I knew what I wanted to do, but actually, getting there was a bit of a nightmare. And a lot of the software producers here in Australia couldn't quite fill that void for us. They were set up to manage relatively small numbers, but really intensely, like in a stud game sort of thing. So there's a few there that we did trial, but they just weren't set up for what we wanted to achieve. And so we basically ended up developing our own software package with the help of MLA and Hitachi, to capture all the data we need and, more importantly, report on it to be able to give us the information we needed to make better decisions on farm, basically, is what it all come down to. Which is, it's efficiency. So we're using that data we're capturing to make better decisions and produce more for the, off that asset, basically. So as I said, EID tags are the key to that, in our business anyway, to underpin that. So we've been using them since 2016. So every lamb that comes on the place, as I said, part of the induction process we run through is they come off the truck through a foot bath, they turn around, get drench vaccinated, ear tagged, and then weighed in the sheep handler, and that starts the data tracking. Although there is, I was talking to Tim there before, and the Victorians are good guys to buy lambs off because they've got EID tags in already, which saves us a bit of time here, and we actually do have, like, that data was started, the data trail rather was started a little bit earlier, which is handy to be able to pass on down the chain too, or up the chain rather. We can provide reports to the vendors that we source our lambs from on how their lambs go relative to the average of the rest of the lambs that we sort of finish in a given time period, which has been handy for some guys. The majority aren't too interested. They just, once they sell their lambs, that's it. They don't want to hear about it, which is fine. But I think there's some pretty powerful information there that breeders can utilise to potentially increase the capacity of their breeding flock, I reckon. Information like how they performed in terms of grams per head per day, FCRs, and how long they spend on farm is generally the type of information we're sending back. So with the software we developed with Hitachi, we can click on a model of lambs, so it comes up not too dissimilar to AgriWeb, like it's a map-based software package. You click on a paddock, it'll give you, so we've got information that comes across from SIBO labs, giving us dry matter production, so in terms of how many kilos a hectare of dry matter of pasture should be in those paddocks, and how many lambs are in there. Something we don't have yet, but we are working to develop into the software is like a grazing chart, automated grazing chart. So it should say, it'll give us, like SIBO Labs data gives us what's there now in the way of dry matter. We want to be able to put in like a scenario. So, say a decile 8, 5 and a 3 or whatever, and to project out 6 months where our feed availability should be, given certain stocking rates. So that's something. So this software is something we're constantly working on and evolving, I guess you'd say, to develop. See where they are, where they came from, and their last treatments, ESIs, and all that sort of stuff. And we're not at the point yet, but we should be pretty damn soon. So the majority of our lambs we sell through to TFI up there in Tamworth, who are. Well, the last few years they've been telling us they're going to put in hook tracking and some better stuff. It's not there yet, unfortunately, but hopefully it's not far around the corner. We should be able to pass a lot of this information along up the value chain, and ultimately where we want to get to is to the consumer. And a bit like Ben was saying before with the QR codes, that's where we want to get to. Like have a QR code where it tells the whole story about the product and how it got to the consumer's plate, basically. Right through from the various quality assurance programs we're tied up with and that sort of thing to guarantee that the animals have been treated ethically and humanely and the rest of it. That's where we'd like to be. We're not there yet, but that's where we're heading. When we started off, we started using reusable tags. So that's a picture of a tag there on that screen, obviously. They just had a back on them. The guys in the abattoir up there were cutting them out for us, so they just cut the back off the tag and would get garbage bags full of EID tags back. We were able to clear that EID number off the software system so we could then reuse it. So that was a way of drastically reducing the cost of those tags, because they're pretty bloody expensive. Range anywhere from $1.20 to about $2.50, depending on where you're looking at, and they're one use only. So we use those. They're obviously not NLS tags. They're only management tags that we're using. They've still got their regular plastic NLS tag. Industry benefits. So traceability is a big one. I think as an industry, we need to be heading more solid and quicker in this direction for disease management, if nothing else. So, you should be able to more quickly isolate a given problem or outbreak if we have a digital chain that links those animals and where they've been and where they've come in contact with each other or whatever, compared to a series of paperwork, which the current system is, but that's a different story for another day. IoT, so Internet of Things. This is a network we developed or set up in 18, I think it was. Could have even been 19. It was one of those bloody dry pricks of years in the drought. We were running around putting sensors in tanks and water troughs. Some flow meters in feedlot pens, which gave us some really interesting data actually. So that gives us a good picture on water quality. So if there's 400 lambs in there, they should be drinking, say, 10 litres of water a day on a hot day. So they should be, there should be X amount of water that they're consuming in a 24-hour period. And if they're not, it gives you a really good idea that trough has got a problem, whether it be algae or dust or whatever. That was giving us a pretty fair idea that there's an issue if they weren't consuming the target water, in a 24-hour period. So we've got some cameras up. Unfortunately, lamb theft is still a big issue. We've been dealing with that for about 10 years. So we've got some security cameras up in strategic locations. And that all comes back to basically just an app. All that data comes through on an app. You set up alerts to say, this tank's low or whatever, and you go out and sort it. Through the drought there, when we had, a hell of a lot of dry, hot days, obviously, that saved a significant amount of time compared to having to drive around and physically look at everything, check everything out. You checked out the app and away you go. For the most part, you still, sensors do fail. So you can get caught out if you're not on the ball a bit that way, but that's all part of the game. So I've only got a couple of minutes left, so went into, this is a bit more about business type stuff, building relationships with our vendors. So about 60% of the lambs we were finishing, we buy off repeat vendors, so there's the same guys year in, year out. And same thing, as I said, the TFI is a bit the same. We've had a really good relationship with those guys since, basically the last 10 years. They've taken pretty well every lamb we've had. Very flexible, it works well for us. As I said, in the next few years, they get some hook tracking there, and we should be able to send some more data up the chain, and then obviously back to us. That'll be another, part of the picture, another puzzle piece, I guess. You'd add, your carcass data to the data sets we already have on farm and try and build out some correlations there to, again, increase your efficiency and productivity on farm, but probably more importantly at the breeder level, at the vendor level as well. So this stuff's more like broader business type stuff. So into the future, hopefully we can continue to grow and expand our business. As Roger said, I've got 4 kids, and Kieran, my brother's got 3. So we need to we need to provide. Well, I'd like to be able to provide, I should say, a pathway for those guys to enter the business, or certainly enter the industry, and be given the opportunities that my parents were fortunate enough to be able to give, Kieran and myself. We've got a bit of work to do to provide that for at least 7 kids. Kieran might go again. I'm not sure yet, but. Product branding, yes, I want to get to the point too, we want to get to rather, the point where we are branding our own product, like I said, with a QR code, and that sort of full provenance story, I guess, underpinning the point of differentiation, I guess, for that brand. Same thing, we're a fair way off that, but that's where we want to get to, yeah. Take-home messages. So technology can make life a lot easier. Along the way, we have found quite a few snake oil salesmen, I guess you'd say, like guys that say, yep, we've got this thing that can do this, and ultimately it's a heap of shit that doesn't work. There is people out there, unfortunately, like that. We've come across a fair few of them. So I don't know, it's just I guess the only thing I'd say to try and avoid that situation is maybe, like testimonial type thing, talk to people who are using that sort of tech on a daily basis. To make that decision before you go and invest, because some of this sort of stuff can be expensive. Like that IoT network we set up, that was about 40 grand. So it's not to be sneezed at. It's a pretty fair investment. So you want to make sure you are getting a return on that investment, obviously. And if you get caught out with someone who's not going to provide the service that they said they would, then obviously that's not going to be a good thing for your business. But backup and service, so that speaks to the same point basically. Make sure if you are making these investment decisions that they've got the capacity and the wherewithal to be able to back up their product, and basically make sure they say what they do what they said they were going to do, and support the adoption decision with a business case. So we didn't do this to start with, and that was something we learnt along the way, is that you've got to make sure that, like any other purchase, whether you're buying a new airset or a bloody header or a mob of sheep or whatever it might be, you make sure that you're backing that business decision up with a solid business case to make sure it's economically viable to do so, I guess, Thanks, guys, for the opportunity to present, and we'll be hanging around for questions afterwards.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Some really interesting insights into your business there, and I'm sure there'll be some questions shortly. Next up, we've got Tim Leeming from down south at Pigeon Pond.